This is the Frazzled American News Headline Review Program, programming of ISAM Crozier's Revolution with Reason, an advertising vehicle for isamcrozier.proboards.com. To join the conversation, join in at isamcrozier.proboards.com. This chill is intentional. All money supportive can be forwarded through patreon.com/isamcrozier. Become a patron at your pleasure at patreon.com/isamcrozier. All transcripts for this and other content can be found at isamcrozier.medium.com. There is a paywall involved. Follow this or other programming of this channel at isamcrozier.medium.com. The podcast can be found for preview or sample at YouTube or SoundCloud.com. The podcast is available for download at Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon, or Apple Podcasts, and also available through other sources I've never heard of, and Google. Revolution with Reason is a news and philosophy opinion review channel. The joke is to tell everybody that I'm special. The punchline is that I wasn't special when I started. I do my best. Here's hoping I am able to inform you of what you did not already have to work with. Before we begin, I want to inform you of the short duration of my first broadcast period, lasting only a little over a week. If you enjoy my programming, please expect me to come back midweek of the month of February 2021. Due to circumstances outside of my control, I will not be able to broadcast during the interim. These are the last night's trending headlines, the links to which can be found by the way of my brand-centric Medium page, the address of which you have already heard before, isamcrozier.medium.com. Fallout from the riots of Wednesday, January 6th are still ongoing. The fallout of the riots have had no systemic impact of yet. This will be the end of my reporting on the matter for the day. Regarding events before the riots, the FBI visited the Capitol storm rioters ahead of the Capitol riots, urging them not to travel to D.C., reports Fox 35 News, a Fox affiliate servicing the Orlando, Florida area. This follows on the heels of two other stories, the first of which being that storm the Capitol building was a term used over 100,000 times before the event took place, and the DHS experienced the gutting of a threat assessment group before the riot. Collectively, let's groan together, why me? And then collectively, roll our sleeves up to clean up President Trump's mess. Here's a connection my imagination believes should be made. Several reports have covered a man who wears a shirt that says Camp Auschwitz during the riots of January 6, 2021 in Washington, D.C. Now, over the last weekend, a Jewish cemetery near the Auschwitz historical site has been vandalized with swastikas and other Nazi propaganda. While some measure of commentary could be made about the swastika being white supremacy among people who experience not getting ahead through periods of drought and abject poverty, and the Jane mathematic principle being of the importance of other people, I'll just point out how coincidental this matter is. A former Miss Universe Ireland was chased by a January 6 rioter. She filmed the encounter and posted about it on Twitter. She's a beauty pageant winner and she works at NASA. This shit is scandalous. In other news, the state of California, known for socialist practices as long as it's fashionable, is in a crisis this week as hospitals will no longer accept new patients with or without COVID-19. Adult patients deemed unable to be saved are now no longer to be taken to hospitals, according to a memo released last week. This is a sure sign that there are no systems in place to discover problems before they may arrive. Scrum would be one such framework. California, this joke writer thinks, needs a dedicated office of government Scrum. Like with any disability, I wouldn't want to be standing where California is. Gorillas are now catching the COVID-19 virus. At the San Diego Zoo, it was discovered that the population of western lowland gorillas, an endangered species, had contracted the virus after two of the gorillas were observed coughing. It is believed that the gorillas caught the disease from a handler who was asymptomatic at the time and wore a mask at the time. Like with any disability, I wouldn't want to be standing where that gorilla is. Unemployment due to the pandemic is likely at record highs as unrecorded numbers of Americans are no longer collecting unemployment insurance. The number of Americans recorded as having been out of work for at least 6 months is at 4 million, while 8.5 million are recorded to have had benefits cut off for them last December. Unemployment numbers have been high before the pandemic, and an economics professor and economist at the AFL-CIO is quoted as saying that they will face discrimination as employers see them as damaged goods. Like with any disability, I wouldn't want to be standing where these out-of-work disenfranchised persons are. The Independent reports. Democrat Representative Bonnie Coleman has put out a statement saying that she believes she was exposed during the protective isolation with Republicans who refused to wear a mask. In a bid to look into making a joke, I took a look at the voting record of Senator Bonnie Watson Coleman. She once voted against funding the Departments of Defense, Health, Human Services, Labor, and the Department of Education. In the same year, she voted against funding the Departments of Energy, Water Resources, the Legislative Branch, Military Construction, and the Department of Veteran Affairs. Her sponsored legislation record displays softball legislation popular at the time but dismal in a view of what needs to be done. I guess what I'm saying is, like with any disability, I wouldn't want to be standing where she is. But I blame her. That's what you get for not being an honest politician. In a moment unfairly echoing alt-right positions, a professor in anthropology and museum curator is under fire today due to a sarcastic remark he made against pressures to censor him. According to the Daily Pennsylvania, Professor Robert Schuller clapped back during an altercation with PhD candidate Liz Quinlan with Sig Heil to You and a triumph salute known generally as the Nazi salute. In the report, Schuller appears to be subtly outcrying about the loss of freedom of speech. In the report, Quinlan appears to be successfully breaking his legs for a swim in the harbor. This is what happens when you can be a great gangster because they'll stand by you. The coup continues. As FBI reports, there are to be credible threats of, quote, storming the state, targeting state buildings and other government functions, if President Donald Trump is removed from office by the 25th Amendment. Taking a broad view of things, this has been a weather report from the Frazzled American. There's something toxic in the water in America this week, as a man cried as he was kicked off a flight at those acting with regard to disease containment regulations were trying to rule his life. This sort of thing is happening and serves as something of a weather report. However, the news channel following the story, in this case Newsweek, glorifies the grand punking of the man instead of showing the truth of what it is that is leading to these meltdown behaviors. At the same time, Reddit, a service presently notorious in political circles for the outcome of free speech in a repressive grand society, featured an AMA with national security and constitutional law experts who have studied violence and trying to inform the public. The link can be found at my Medium, isamcrozier.medium.com, or on the Reddit board r/politics. ABC News reports that the state of Mississippi has instituted a peach flower in place of its old flag, the bearer of the Confederate cross, admittedly a symbol of refusal. From a southern perspective, I would like to point out that the magnolia is called a peach flower, a symbol of sensitivity to that pressures cause bruises. With this new symbol of denial of freedoms of speech, this joke writer says that America has far to go. California Democrat Linda Sanchez says she's poised to ban the naming of virtually everything from bearing President Trump's name. This might actually be a good idea. Okay, next story. Now for some uplifting news. New York State's Governor Andrew Cuomo has loosened the restrictions on the COVID-19 vaccine due to vials of vaccine being thrown away. Now, anyone who works where vaccines are done can take vaccination as long as there is any of the antidote left behind. Now, if Cuomo only legalized weed, it would fit right in with that automatic voter registration and people being vaccinated. The United States drive to vaccinate the population is hitting stage 2 of its stride as ballparks and football stadiums are being opened and leveraged to vaccinate a larger and more diverse pool of people. In this wave, public servants such as police officers, firefighters, and teachers will be taken care of. God bless America. The number of COVID vaccination doses administered rose by 1.2 million on Monday, as reported by Bloomberg News. That makes a beautiful sunset to today's news day. But there's still more news. Alula, a platform supporting the fight against cancer, has raised over $2.2 million to support cancer caregivers, patients, and survivors. Well, that's nifty. The University of Berkeley has launched an online magazine to provide science-based insights on life and living. This magazine, located at greatergood.berkeley.edu, is a project that I support wholeheartedly, and so although I am not being paid for this sponsorship, nonetheless I will be sponsoring this magazine for some time to come. Again, that's greatergood.berkeley.edu. A website has been collecting advertisements for remote jobs and makes this information available to the public. Because of the paid nature of my format, the link for this website will be available in this content's description. It would appear that some of the stipulations do apply. I will be sharing this link for the rest of the duration of the COVID response, or until I exhaust my resources for this podcast entirely, whichever condition may come first. In tonight's final story, NJ.com reports that police officers in Newark, New Jersey didn't fire a single shot in the year of 2020. These results are following a federal consent decree instituted by the Department of Justice after the conclusion in 2014. Now this is hopeful. This has been Isham Samuel Crozier, reading to you last night's trending headlines. And I think I like the good news best, really. I do. I like the good news. Here's a hopeful song, maybe I'll find a nice closing sound one day if I know where to look. Beep.